A national media pundit has the Arizona Cardinals as the landing spot for cornerback James Bradberry. I'll talk about it. And Mina Kimes from ESPN joins me for 2 segments. It's great stuff. You don't want to miss it. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Here we go.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. This episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Mina Kimes from ESPN at Mina Kimes on Twitter is going to join me for 2 segments. Recorded the interview a couple days ago. I kind of wanted to let the schedule release breathe before I posted the interview. It's incredible stuff. She's one of the best in the business. She's very honest about the Arizona Cardinals in the interview, and then when she's on Around the Horn and NFL Primetime or NFL Live, so you do not want to miss that. That is making up the final 2 segments. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Bill Barnwell of ESPN, the aforementioned ESPN, has James Bradberry's new job as the cornerback of the Arizona Cardinals. Cool. I mean, it's just nice to have the Arizona Cardinals name in national media members' mouths and words when it comes to landing free agents. Because one thing that we've seen is, the arms race, it started with the NFC West, really. I think they were like, and this could be, me being geocentric, and division-centric. But it seems like, with Jamal Adams, them trading up for Trey Lance, the 49ers, the Rams doing everything they do, getting Marcus Peters, then trading him, then trading for Jalen Ramsey, signing Clay Matthews and Eric Weddle when they were on the tail end of their career, but still big names. The Todd Gurley, bringing in Andrew Whitworth and paying him, just feel like that the NFC West was kind of maybe one minimal step ahead of the rest of the NFL when it came to player movement and going for it in trades and free agency. Now it's obviously off the rails. NFL free agency has now turned into NBA free agency and has overshadowed NBA free agency, which at one point, probably 5 or 6 years ago, 8 years ago, nobody would have thought that would ever happen with any sports entity. But now with the player empowerment, wanting money up front, all the things with the wide receivers now, we didn't hear a whole lot about the Arizona Cardinals being tied to any big name free agents. And you could use they don't like, letting people know what they're doing. Okay. They can play in their treehouse as much as they want in their clubhouse making their, their capes out of towels and whatever, like they're 7, but the Cardinals have not been tied to really any free agents. If any more than a blip of, the Cardinals have interest and they're like the 8th team on the list. When you see the Cardinals tied to somebody that they desperately need to bolster their roster, it's cool. I mean, it's a nice little sprinkle of sugar on what's been kind of a ho-hum offseason. I know bringing back Zach Ertz and James Conner were paramount. Like I'm not diminishing those whatsoever, but they haven't really made a splash signing. And they've they traded for Hollywood Brown. Okay, got it. And they drafted Trey McBride, drafted Cam Thomas in the 3rd round. Like, it hasn't really been a lot. It hasn't been a lot. With DeAndre Hopkins out for 6 weeks, I still think that they're going to be in the market for a wide receiver. So I have Mina Kimes on today. Great interview. I'm going to have Mike Golick Jr., formerly of ESPN, now doing great things elsewhere. The Gojo podcast. I'm going to talk to him about his Stick 6 t-shirts and the charity that's tied to it. I'm going to talk about a lot of offensive line stuff with him because I am still in the camp that this offensive line isn't good enough to keep Kyler Murray protected. Like, it's good, but it's not where it needs to be to keep Kyler Murray, off the ground and keeping this Arizona Cardinals team moving forward. So I'm going to ask him a lot about that. And then I'm going to do on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm going to do a real breakdown of the schedule release. I kind of put it on pause because it's saturating everything. I did my regurgitation of words as it was getting released, and I'm like, my brain, it's like if your mom or dad was like, hey, do you want a full red velvet cake for breakfast? And you're 7 years old. Like, I can't process this. Too much excitement, too many things, too many game plans that need to be made. So I kind of took a beat, and then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I'm really going to break down the schedule. I had them going 11-6 before the schedule release. I still do. And this is kind of the antithesis of what I've been talking about this offseason, because this schedule is going to be absolutely brutal. It's going to be brutal. And it based on last year's win-loss record for these teams is not doing the difficulty of this schedule justice, because the entire AFC West got better. All of them. So that would up the win percentage of the teams the Cardinals are going to be playing from last year to this year. I will get into that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Mina Kimes from ESPN is going to join me for the next 2 segments. I recorded this interview on Friday, but I wanted to give, I wanted the schedule release thing to kind of dissipate so this great interview didn't get lost in the fray. Mina Kimes from ESPN joins me for the next 2 segments. Next, Locked On Cardinals, first, betonline.net. Our partners at BetOnline continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, just a slew of Game 7s. NHL, I think there were 7 over the weekend. Just bonkers. Major League Baseball. I wish Major League Baseball, I've talked about this from time to time, especially when I was hosting radio shows. I wish Major League Baseball was my favorite sport. Imagine having 162 times to watch the Cardinals if they're your favorite team. Imagine that. For 6 months, every day, your favorite team's on TV. And betonline.net's got you covered. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Second segment here, Locked On Cardinals. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Really excited to get this person in to talk Cardinals, NFC West, Kliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, etc. One of the best in the business, Mina Kimes. At Mina Kimes on Twitter, NFL all over the place at ESPN. Mina, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, let's get down to brass tacks first. How does it feel to be the second most important Kimes Twitter follow in your family?
It feels okay. My mom's always been kind of the star of our family. People just didn't know it yet. So I'm happy that the world has discovered her.
That's good. That's on record now, in perpetuity. Okay. I've been going back and forth. Let's start with Kliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray versus the Arizona Cardinals. I'm in the camp that he's kind of outgrown his agent, and in the new day and age of 2022, where everything is discussed via social media, et cetera, the Arizona Cardinals are in the Mesozoic era when it comes to contract negotiations. If you're in a courtroom and you've got, Dr. Carville and Will Ferrell from Old School on either side, or, which side are you on? Are you on Kyler Murray's side? Are you on the Arizona Cardinals side?
Well, I would say so with regards to Kyler's contract, right, which is ultimately what this is about, I can see why he's kind of agitating at the moment. I also can kind of see how he hasn't articulated this, but probably has had some frustration with decisions made by both Kliff and Steve Keim that we can talk about. But I can also see why the Cardinals would have some hesitance about doing the contract now. In recent years, we have seen a lot of teams that give their first round draft pick quarterbacks early contracts. Of course, Jared Goff and Carson Wentz come to mind, come to regret it. Right. And even when they do drag it out, like the Cowboys did with Dak Prescott, it usually seems to work out in the end. I think the relief that Cardinals fans can have in all of this is it does just seem to be about the money. I mean, I know I said that he probably has some frustration. I'm just speculating there, no information, but around the league, we've seen so many big name quarterbacks and wide receivers agitating to leave, demanding trades, not demanding trades, but actually demanding trades. This doesn't seem to be that. Like, he does seem, I could be wrong, I don't know, but he's saying he wants to stay in Arizona. And that usually just means I want to stay, but I want to get paid.
Yeah, agreed. Mina Kimes at Mina Kimes on Twitter. All things NFL at ESPN. The Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. New great episode with the person who will be joining Locked On Cardinals tomorrow, Mike Golick Jr. Check her out. Yeah, I've been trying to get him for a while. We're going to talk a lot of thick six. I feel like we're going to talk a lot of food.
Fun fact, Mike and I both lived in Arizona.
You did?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Dang,
I went to junior high and high school in Gilbert, Arizona, which is where, of course, Ryan Fitzpatrick is from.
That is true. That's about 20 minutes away from where I'm recording this podcast right now. Oh, cool. Look at this. Real insider info on Locked On Cardinals. Contractually speaking, what I've been thinking about with Kyler Murray, et cetera, is look at all the teams that would trade for him tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's not like a bargaining chip per se, because what we've seen over the course of, since like the NBA really started to ruin things for players, where it's like Blake Griffin, he got $170 million. And you're like, well, Clippers aren't paying the extent of that for the entirety of his contract. We're starting to see with wide receivers. Just because your favorite player gets paid by the team that you watch and love the most does not mean by any stretch that player is going to live out the entirety of the contract with that team. But with Kyler Murray, he's one of the most exciting players to ever wear an Arizona Cardinals uniform. He's electrified this city. He's done things for this organization. He's brought him to a level that they haven't really been talked about in the national media as much as, besides the 2015 run. And then, the Larry Fitzgerald to the Super Bowl run that Chris Collinsworth said was, I think he said they're the worst team to ever make the Super Bowl, if I'm quoting that correctly. How important is Kyler Murray to the image and future of this organization, where it's like, I know this is about money, but look at all the other teams that would pay him. Why not just pay him?
Well, you're 100% right about what the market for him would look like starting there. I think he's everything. I think if he were to leave, it's really hard to imagine what the future of the franchise looks like unless they happen to, have one of the top 4 draft picks next year and could grab hilariously like Bryce Young, who is basically Kyler Murray. But I think, but if that's an option, of course, it gets a little bit more interesting, right? But it is very hard to predict those number 1 picks, especially with all of the teams who are hoping to get in, the 2023 market for college quarterbacks. So even if they did with a trade, it would have to be with a team that like sucks, right? About Kyler and his play, and I guess whether he deserves this, I've been pretty clear talking about the Cardinals over the last year or so that I think Steve Keim has not done a good job as a GM. Candidly, I'll just say, like, I think that was my big takeaway on First Take, and people were surprised. And I was like, how is this surprising to you? Look at all these moves and drafts. And if you throw out the Hopkins pick, which I don't know if that was more about him or about Bill O'Brien getting just absolutely swindled, collectively, a lot of really, I just don't really, I question a lot of the decision making. And then Kliff Kingsbury, I would say has outperformed my expectations before he came into the job, but we've seen time and time again a lack of adaptivity, and setting aside the in-game decision making, which drove me crazy for a while, and I got a little bit better at. So, you look at those, and then you put Kyler's occasional, I don't know, like the playoff game, right, in perspective or relative to those things. And I think you can see why he hasn't always been put in a position to succeed. I would say, there are legitimate criticisms as to his ability to overcome those circumstances, being the number 1 draft pick, being so talented, what people see, on the field from him. He's not like the go-go guy or whatever. And I get all that, but I think if you look at the organization and you're ranking the list of problems, if you want to go about it that way, Kyler Murray is extremely low.
God, can you just say that all again? How's your How's your photogenic memory? I mean, there are three things that lead to the recession or receding of my hairline. One, it's my mom's dad. Thanks a lot, Papa. I mean, that's the, the thing. And then Steve Keim and Kliff Kingsbury tied for second. So I'm going to break down a couple of things you said. One, I think what Steve Keim has done in free agency and through trades and drafting Kyler Murray, trading up for Budda Baker, has kind of sugar-coated the lack of fat on this roster. I mean, it's been top-heavy ever since he's come into the GM ship. Number two, what I say about Kliff Kingsbury is he can put together a great trailer to a movie, but the movie's not always great. Some of his play calling is masterful. It's like, where the hell is this? And then, you get first and goal from the 7, it's 2 false starts, and you're kicking a field goal. Mm-hmm. When they were 10-2 last year, it was after they, 7-0, AJ Green doesn't turn around on Thursday Night Football, and then things start to fall off. When they were 10-2, still through 13 weeks, I think they had their bye week at that point. Were you still thinking that this is, fool's gold? Or was there any time last year where you're like, you know what? Is this the year that this step gets taken by the Cardinals?
I always, it's such a quarterback-driven league. And when Kyler Murray was playing at an MVP level, halfway in the season or whatever, I thought, okay, if he continues playing like this, which is entirely possible, then it doesn't matter what else is going on with the rest of the roster aside from a few key players. Obviously, losing DeAndre Hopkins kind of just, well, I'll get to that in a second. But it doesn't matter. If you've got one of those dudes, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, you will be competitive. This is a guy, Kyler Murray is not a quarterback you win games with. He is a guy you can win games because of, which is a very significant distinction. And there aren't that many quarterbacks in that group. That said, whenever I would express doubt about the team, and I did at points during the season, it's because I just felt there was such a lack of depth, on the roster. And, it's a long season and things happen. And when you have a team that, as you said, is top heavy, and then, those pieces are stripped away or something happens, that depth can really come to bite you. And I think obviously that's something we saw, of course, with Hopkins. But there were other places throughout that I felt would be concerning if, players just weren't playing super well, or the JJ Watt, that all of that. And I think that all kind of came to fruition.
That was the first portion of the interview that I did yesterday with Mina Kimes from ESPN. Coming up, we'll finish it up with the final segment and with the second portion of the interview. Great stuff so far from Mina. That's next. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. But first, Built Bar. Built Bar, Built Bar, Built Bar. They're all chocolate covered, okay? 150 calories, 16 grams of protein, only 9 grams of sugar on this limited time flavor with the Built birthday cake puffs. I got a box of them. They're incredible. If you're looking for a healthy way to get flavor and variety in your day, this is what we've got for you. Imagine dipping your finger into that plastic tub of birthday cake frosting and then opening your eyes and realizing there was only 150 calories and 16 grams of protein. That's what it's like to eat a birthday cake puff from Built Bar that I was just talking about. I got them. I ate one this morning. They are incredible. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. All the Built Puffs are covered in 100% real chocolate. That means that with Built, you can eat healthy and actually enjoy doing it. And they're made with collagen protein, which your body absorbs more efficiently and provides tons of health benefits. Go to Built.com to get birthday cake puffs now. Go to Built.com. Use promo code LOCK15 to get 15% off your order. Use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at Built.com. Final segment, Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter at Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day, free and available on all platforms. Jared Goff won because of Sean McVay. Kyler Murray wins in spite of Kliff Kingsbury. Is another one of my things that I try not to say as much anymore because I do need to give Kyler Murray more criticism. Kliff Kingsbury didn't throw that pick six. He didn't throw it. He didn't Carson Wentz it in the playoffs. With the pick six on the goal line. And I feel like that there are players who were drafted by ecosystems that were used to winning, namely Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, who ruined it for everybody. They ruined this is a 21-year-old kid who's growing up in front of our very eyes, trying to lead an organization that's never really won. That's obviously not the case for Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. And I throw Russell Wilson in there because if you were to associate with the team, Seattle Seahawks would be the closest. Who'd you associate? I mean, Russell Wilson walked, and this is not taking anything away from him because I still think he's a top 5 or top 6 guy. If I had to win one game on a neutral field, I'd still choose Russell Wilson. But he walked into Xanadu when it came to the defense and Marshawn Lynch and Pete Carroll, stability at that point, and John Schneider before he forgot how to draft. But the one thing that's comparable between the two is the lack of offensive line help during the entirety of his time there. I know they had Dwayne Pratt. I know they had guys.
Yeah.
But when they traded, right when they jumped the shark and traded Max Unger, it's like, well, this is a different NFL. And that's what I'm worried about with Kyler Murray, because even though they're close to the same stature, even though it seems that's, a statistical impossibility, Kyler Murray doesn't have the ability to Byron Leftwich it through a half a season with a broken ankle. He just doesn't have that. Is the offensive line, is that it? Is that what makes the Cardinals go because of everything you just said about Kyler Murray before the downfall last year?
I think it's definitely part of it, and back to the Seahawks, they definitely underinvested, in the group because of Russell Wilson's elusiveness, which I think is, of course, something that translates to a criticism of the Cardinals. But they actually did pick a lot of linemen. They just didn't work out. They were just bad at identifying talent. And I think that would be my concern with Arizona, which is, okay, you've, taken some shots at drafting guys. We'll see, can Josh Jones crack, the starting lineup, for example, and they did the Rodney Hudson trade, which I as a player, I love. I wish that had worked out better, frankly, just because I thought the trade was brilliant. So, that's me. But then you look at guys like, they signed Will Hernandez, who was not very good in New York. Obviously Humphreys has been good, but I do think that that's an issue. That was probably, well, it's hard to say it was the single biggest problem down the stretch, because obviously the Hopkins loss and then the inability to adjust. And I think, or the lack of talent, frankly, beyond it. The Cardinals wide receiver group had a lot of guys who I thought were really great number 3s. In 2021, AJ Brown should not be getting that many targets. I love Antoine Wesley, for example. There's a player who I thought, wow, he's doing some stuff. But he should be, at best, a number 3. Obviously, we don't know about the Isabella stuff. Rondell Moore, I was kind of disappointed in his performance and usage. So I just think, you look at this team and you realize, oh man, once you take out one, I keep going back to this, but once you take out a piece, it is rough, and I think we'll see how it goes this year. Obviously, losing Hopkins is absolutely brutal, and that kind of reintroduces the whole challenge to Kliff Kingsbury, who I believe should be on the hot seat despite the extensions and whatnot. But it is a real challenge.
I may have a co-hosting role open. I don't know. I mean, I've got a list that I have people that I have to interview. Mina, I'll get you out of here on this. Thank you for being so brutally honest about everything. I try to bring that. People say, I tell the truth. People don't. I always appreciate the truth. It's fine.
Declining that. Well, I think I'm being more positive about Kyler than a lot of national media. So
agreed. And that wasn't a backhanded compliment by any stretch. Okay, so going into 2022, what is the thing that you're going to be most excited to witness the Arizona Cardinals about? The thing that you're going to tune in to watch the Cardinals for?
So here's an optimistic view, I guess. First of all, I think Kyler Murray is absolutely electric, and I love watching him play. He's on my top 5, just not best quarterbacks necessarily, but the quarterbacks I just like watching the most. So in the first half of the season, I want to see if Kliff Kingsbury can make adjustments after losing Hopkins. When the suspension was announced, we were on TV and we just kind of reacted to it. And my first thought was well, this team just spent their first draft pick on a tight end, the best tight end in the draft, I think. Suddenly, you follow the car. I can't remember, when was the last time they actually had arguably a tight end duo like this between him and Ertz?
Never.
So my question is, and then Max Williams is a great blocker and whatnot. And then I think they signed the guy from the Chargers, right? Who's pretty decent. Kliff Kingsbury, like, what you going to do? Right. Like, you can't do 10 with this group of receivers. You just can't. Obviously the trade for Marquise Brown made a lot more sense, but like, this should be a very different offense. And then I mentioned this on my podcast, but going back to when Kliff Kingsbury came into the league with Kyler in 2019, the Arizona run game was significantly better than the passing attack. In fact, it was one of the best in the NFL. I actually was surprised at how I thought Kliff was actually pretty good as a run game designer. So I want to see creativity from him. I want him to look at the person. Like, you cannot run back what you did last season with this suspension. You will not survive. So you have to make adjustments. And I do think they have the talent to do so.
Agreed. Follow her at Mina Kimes on Twitter. The Mina Kimes Show featuring Lenny. You can check out the most recent episode from 2 days ago with my guest for tomorrow, Mike Golick Jr., thick six, the man himself. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
Ask Mike about Zeteas. That's our favorite chain that's like only in Arizona.
Can I tell you something? I mean, I worked there for 8 years.
No, you got to bring this up to Mike. Did you know that Nick Foles' dad founded Zeteas?
I did.
Okay, yeah, that's like my favorite weird NFL trade.
And I served his mom multiple times.
Oh, wow.
Zeteas, yeah. I've gotten more people inebriated and in Ubers after. Okay, we're not talking drinking and driving.
No, the prickly pear margs at Zeteas. We used to go there. Okay, I'll just leave you with this. We used to go there as a family, like, so often because my dad loved it. And he loved it so much that he actually bought a Zeteas pin.
Those are like, that's getting like a Super Bowl ring in the Zeteas world. I mean, those do not get given out. So you know what? He must be royal.
I miss that queso, man. I miss the queso.
Me too. My gut doesn't, but yeah. Anyways, we're just talking now. Thank you to everybody who makes Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Free and available on all platforms. Again, follow her at Mina Kimes on Twitter. She's all over. NFL Live is one of the best shows on TV. You guys do. I don't know. It's like, how do I put this? Like making the band. It's like, how did that happen? Like, it was like Rutledge and then Orlovsky with his wild suits and Ryan Clark. I have a man crush on Ryan Clark's ability to do what he does.
He's awesome.
Like, and then Marcus Spears. Like, it's just you guys. I mean, it's great because it's the perfect fusion of sports and laughing, which is what needs to happen now. It can't just be stats and bats and all this stuff. And you have your time for that. You have your time for ripping each other. I love it. So yeah, check that out on ESPN. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Mike Golick Jr. tomorrow, thick six. He's going to talk about his charity and his new job at DraftKings. We're going to talk Cardinals as well. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.